Hello, everybody. This is Activities Across Grade Levels for returning to school. And you might say, I don't know, it's only July 2nd. How could we be doing returning to school? Well, this year things are so different that we figure it might be a real good idea to give you some ideas about how to prepare for school well in advance. Because if you've got 8 weeks between now and the start of school and you don't do anything with 4 of them, you lost half your time. Note the accurate math going on with that. So at any rate, more to the point, we just want to have something that can be useful to you right away. So let's take a look at several of our standard pieces for getting things going here. First of all, thank you for joining us. It is good fun to be able to share these ideas every week. Susan has been doing loads of great work with her district and still finds time for this kind of thing, which I appreciate tremendously. I appreciate your joining in as well. I mean, it's July and you're joining us. Man, that's an honor. I bow in your direction. I would also like to just say, hey, as you begin to think about these different pieces, let us know what you think. So toss stuff out in the chat. Write us if you're watching this as a recording, and let us know. We've got a number of cool things kind of on the way in the plans for our episodes for the end of July and in August, and we hope that those will be pieces that are quite exciting to you. A shout out to all the folks from Fowler Unified who might be joining us right now or watching in the recording, as well as all the good folks in Jerome up in Idaho. Love working with you guys and appreciate all of the encouragement you have given for the work we're doing. And as always, a thanks to Richard Byrne for helping promote what we do. The site that he does, his blog, Free Technology for Teachers, is one of those places where you can just find kind of idea after idea after idea after idea. And so by all means, if you have never gotten in and taken a good look at that, now's the time. Get in there. Actually, after we finish recording is the time. Just saying. All right, so it is very nice to meet you. So I will start by introducing my compatriot here, Susan. And Susan, give some details about what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Susan, and I'm an instructional technology coach in Central California. I work in a teeny tiny district called Fowler, where I support 125 K-12 teachers just in the role of making education more exciting with technology, and now more essential, right? In the past, it was kind of like the way we can enhance it, and now it's just how we're doing it. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a new adventure, whereas in the past, being a technology coach was just kind of like that extra thing, and now it's the core thing. So I love the role I get to do in supporting teachers during this absolutely insane, different time, and how we're shifting it to be the new normal. Before being a technology coach, I was a kindergarten and second grade teacher, and that's my background. I have 3 awesome kids, and I'm excited to be here with you.
Awesome. And my name is Rushton. I'm a former high school teacher of Japanese language, former middle school teacher of video production, and a former K-12 school and then online high school principal, which was interesting work. I'm glad I did it, and glad I now run a nonprofit, all right, which is actually the thing I do. The thing I do is Next Vista for Learning. It's an online library of videos by and for teachers and students everywhere, free to use, free to contribute to, free to download from, all for a student audience, all screen content, my own little attempt to save the universe from ignorance, one creative video at a time. Ding! All right, so that's what we do. And I hope that you'll give all the offerings on the site a look. Lots of videos that have been contributed by students and teachers from around the world. And the hope is that the different things you find there will inspire you to see some great possibilities for your students this fall, no matter the nature of the medium in which we are meeting them. So what we do in activities across grade levels is we take any given idea and then we say, okay, what does that mean for the K2 crowd? What does that mean for the grades 3 to 5? What about middle school? What about high school? And we also believe that the different things we talk about are things that are valuable across grade levels, obviously, right? And what we want is for someone who teaches high school to listen to the K2 piece and go, wow, that's really valuable to me. So we try to build our comments in such a way that becomes valuable in that fashion. Now, we're going to have to preface things a little bit this time around because we're doing things a little bit differently, and it's going to require a whole lot of, what would that be? Flexibility. So as you think about trying to get into the space that you're going to need to be in for this fall, flexibility is this key thing, right? And we're gonna hit this kind of over and over, but what we want is for you to be thinking, all right, I've got these questions about what it means to be teaching the way I'm teaching now, and how it'll be different, say, this fall than it was in the switch from in-person to online instruction in the spring. And if you are a Southern Hemisphere person, apologies for being Northern Hemisphere centric about such stuff. But point being that there are things you can do that will allow you to be in better shape than you would be otherwise. And that's our hope over the course of the next half hour or so, is to kind of get you in a space of saying, that's what I needed to know. All right. So with that, we're going to start, as we always do, with our young learners, and I'll hand it over to Susan to start sharing some ideas. Susan, you're up.
Yeah, so those first days of kindergarten or the first days of first grade, it's always been about setting routines, right? How do we walk in a line safely? How do we do the school thing, right? Like, how do we school? Like, some kids, it's their first time coming if they don't have preschool experience, sitting in a space, picking up a pencil, using the scissors. It's always been about getting familiar with the tools. How to be in line safely is one that comes in mind. And it's different. We actually were on campus yesterday morning, and we were talking about what it looked like if you have kids walking in a line 6 feet apart, and how long a kindergarten line becomes. And we have poles in our hallways, that idea of like some kind of visual marker and that holds up. And we're thinking about, even just 10 kids and how long a line becomes. How do we practice that in the new normal? Everything's a little bit different. And as we're setting up those routines this year, we have to have that in mind. What does it look like? What does washing your hands different look like? Even just the thing of kids turning faucets on and on. We're like, how many things do we need to stop and reevaluate? Everything we do is just a little bit different. As the teacher walk over to the faucet, turn the faucet on, let the kids wash so no one else is touching. There's so many little things. It's been just a really big eye-opening adventure going here. So planning for flexibility, planning for how do we take what we've always done and make sure that we have that mindset of how things could change on a dime. So when we think about setting up school year, as a kindergarten teacher, I always made a pencil box for my kids. It usually had a certain set of materials. Now I think about what would be the materials that I'd want them to have at home. Some of those things that we've shared in the past, manipulatives, the little plastic bears, the Unifix cubes. What if we gave them all their own little box of those? And whether that's something that we got from Dollar Tree or something that we laminated and made, could we have them have their own material box? So that way we're not pulling from shared buckets, right? They always have 3 sharp pencils. They always have those things. And that being a thing that, should we get the call that says, sorry, everyone's going home for a length of time, that we could just stick in the backpack. So now they have those resources to use at home as well. So just thinking about that, letter tiles, 10 frames in the elementary grades. I see these whiteboards, right? These are some pictures I have there. Dollar Tree actually has these. They're $1. They're not the highest quality thing in the world, but that ability to use that in person, right? To have them hold something up and write something. But I think about that during video calls. And I know we're talking about creative things. What if they were able to write the answer to something on the video call, hold up that little whiteboard paddle and show their answer? Are those the kinds of things that I might just have in students' desks and therefore send home in the backpack should we, again, have to switch to online learning? Little things like that students would need individual, their own. We've always been able to share. We can't share the same we've always been able to. Going back to that idea of walking in line in a hallway, I read this really great article talking about how some preschools are trying to, just be safe as they move kids around. And the idea of airplane arms really is as simple as it sounds. If we teach kids to stretch their arms out and not touch like an airplane, right? That at least gives us, it's not 6 feet, but if you have my 2 or feet, so from my arm and their arm, we're getting them that idea of what physical space is. Because I think of my own 5-year-old son and his understanding of staying away from, no way, there's friends, there's kids, we're going to pal, we're going to be on top of each other. So just setting up some routines. And if it is calling it airplane arms, so we can, have those physical distancing parameters kind of set, got to teach them, set those different routines. Also in back to school, I know with my own teachers, oftentimes when we're getting started, we don't always start with the computers on day one, especially in kindergarten. Now, the benefit that the first grade and second grade teachers have this year is these kids have been doing this for a bit. Like in a lot of schools, they had more experience in the last 3 months with technology than they've had in a long time. But first day of kindergarten, these kids don't even know how to log in. Sometimes teachers might say, well, let's wait till after we get the basics, like how to walk in a line and use the scissors in place. We know that in this new normal, we need to make sure that kids have those procedures. How do I log into my Chromebook? Where do I go then? You know, if that's Access Clever or Google Classroom or Schoology, how do I find those things? Probably need to be bumped up to within the first couple of weeks of school to make sure students kind of have a little bit of an idea of how to access just the basic learning materials digitally. And then moving on to students who are just a little bit older, your upper elementary kids. I've watched my 2nd grade and 4th grade daughters, you know, go through this experience. And they do have a new understanding of how to use the technology. In my own district, we had a lot of success with distance learning. But I know that for some schools, this is going to be day one. Like, we can't assume that kids have had that experience. So establishing protocols, let students know where they can access that digital content. What is your learning management system? Is it Google Classroom or one of those other commercial LMSs where kids are going to find the things? And make sure that you have those protocols. I know a lot of teachers did a lot of experimenting over the last couple months, and they tried a lot of different things. Finding that tool, that path, so it's not a different way each time. Where's that home base, a website, that central place where students are going to access it and teach them on the first day of school? Okay, all of your digital learning happens here, right? So they have a home base for that. I talk about tools like Flipgrid. You know, I've talked about Flipgrid so many times, but as a way of building and maintaining community. Maybe you send one out if you have a messaging tool that you use with parents that you can get to them ahead of time. Like, maybe we could do this as a getting to know you even before school begins. Like, send me a video, tell me about yourself, tell me how to pronounce your name correctly, tell me something about you, and can we start building that community either from before school starts or from the first day, so that we're making those connections with each other, building some community, having a space like Flipgrid. And I do love Flipgrid for that reason, being able to have all those faces. We may not be together physically, but we can at least see and hear each other using a tool like that. And, you know, again, talking about tools, just being mindful and intentional about how many new tools we bring in. You want to consider what experiences students have had. So if you have students who were in your school before and you know, or maybe just go down the hall and say, hey, we're in 3rd grade here. Tell me about what you guys did last year that we can build off of. So you're not reinventing wheels for kids. Are there common experiences maybe within your school of platforms that were used that you can grow from? And then what are those must-have tools that you can start from day one? You don't want it to start with, oh, we're going to use these 15 platforms, right? That's a lot for the parents. It's a lot for the kids. It's a lot for you. So finding those must-haves and really streamlining that. One thing that we have found to be really successful, and as teachers, depending on, you know, your level of access to, you know, your level in the school, are you a teacher? Are you an administrator? Are you a technology specialist of some kind? But knowing what some of these extra tools can do for you. We use a tool called GoGuardian, and some of the similar ones might be Securely or Lightspeed, but a lot of these are in place in districts, and teachers, and sometimes they run in the back end. They're the content management, the filters, they're kind of the background, but oftentimes they have some monitoring features that teachers haven't had a chance to really explore. That happened in our district, where we've had this GoGuardian thing kind of running for a while, but we found out that there were some really powerful ways that we can get student data browsing reports. We can go through and see how they were spending their time online. Where were most of the hours spent? And can we now make changes in our plans to just make sure that our kids are on task? Some other things that GoGuardian did for us is allowed some on-screen monitoring. A great example of that is I had an RSP teacher who, when the student was in her synchronous class, like on Zoom, having a conversation with the teacher, the RSP teacher was able to use GoGuardian kind of like as almost like a pop-up side chat to support the student during that lesson. So a lot of those tools have some additional features that allow you to access the student, you know, even just a little on-screen chat, a little bubble popped up. And so the student was doing their work, but the teacher was able to see the student's screen and interact with the student. So just being aware of what tools your district has in place and how that might support you if you're in a remote teaching situation. You knowing that from the start, so that you can let your kids know from the start what some of those tools might be. Again, we have to be in that mindset of like switching gears on a dime. We don't know, and we're going to be flexible, but just what are the most important things you can put in place to maximize success, no matter what that. And again, this is just an example. I talk about Flipgrid, I talk about Seesaw, you've heard me talk about those, but this right here, this is about kids. Right here, these are kids making connections, you know, who's your pet, who's your, you know, how do we connect to families. I love Flipgrid for that reason. You know, I just watched the Flipgrid live this last week, and they have made so many updates, and so many tools like Flipgrid are doing that for teachers right now. What's the way that we can change and adapt our software to make sure that we are best meeting the needs of learners? I'd say that just as we're being really flexible, I think software developers such as Flipgrid are doing amazing things right now to make sure that whatever our circumstances are going to be, that our kids have the tools they need for success.
Let's take it up to the middle school level and talk about some of the things that you might want to have in mind as you're preparing for middle school classes. So as we talked about in terms of just building community, the idea of how you're going to build rapport with kids is one of those things that doesn't need to be set separately from how you're going to work with them on developing their academic skills. So one of the first things that we have in looking at this is the idea of how do we cite sources, right? How do we get in there so that kids are fully understanding, you know, what it means to kind of be properly respecting the work of others, things like that. And so the 2-slide presentation, and just tossed into the chat a template. So you click on that and it'll do a forced copy, which is great. You can make it your own. But what it is a very, very simple assignment where there is a first slide that has an image on it that is one you can legally use, a Creative Commons image in this case. And the second one, which is why you chose that image, and that's it. And you might say, okay, well, that's not much. And it's like, right, what it is focused on making sure that they cite their source without getting so far into everything else that they ignore citing sources, because that's kind of an annoying part for them, they think. And there's a lot more I could say on this, but there's a lot of uses for this. So for example, when you're building a report at the beginning of the semester, you might say, hey, look, what I want you to do is I want you to find a site or an image from this site or from this site, and you know, we've got a load of pieces of advice related to using images in one of our early episodes of activities across grade levels, where the idea is, you know, find something that you can legally use, cite it, and then talk about it. And maybe to start with, you're having them pick a picture of something that's important to them so that they're introducing themselves to each other and to you alongside this developing skill of saying, here is where I got this, and this is the perhaps even license, you know, that's a part of it, things like that. You can do vocabulary review doing these kinds of things. You can have people draw connections between different things that you're teaching, and how to see that in the context of something that you've covered in a previous unit. So there's a lot of possibilities with that for both connecting with them and developing some really strong skills as you go as well. Now, with any tech you use, make sure you model it as you go. So whatever it is that you really like to use, show them how you use it. So if you have a particular way of citing sources or building video content or whatever it may be, make sure that they understand that's a go-to tool for you and that's how you use it. In showing that to them, you can talk through your thinking process, and it allows them to see you're not just somebody who comes in and says, memorize this. Instead, the idea is for you to be someone who says, this is how I go about this. I'm always interested in your ideas. What are ways that I can improve this? How might you use it as a part of what we do? And having kids be able to respond to what you do in that fashion can be really strong for developing the right attitude in class. Now, I've got a word here that is a word that can go wrong, all right? And that is categorize. Carefully categorize your kiddos. And you might say, oh my God, that could so go wrong. It could. If what you're doing is saying this kid is in this group and this kid is in this group, and therefore, you know, then what you've done is you've tied this impression and your judgment in a way that's not useful. However, if what we're trying to do is to make sure that we don't ignore kids, and we have kind of a system built around the idea of being organized and how we reach out to them. Do you have kids, for example, that are kind of more introverted, and so they're really good at kind of being quiet and being ignored in the classroom? You know, I mean, like, you know, we have this thing as teachers. It's like, oh, that kid's great, you know, does well, you know, blah blah blah. But maybe that kid doesn't speak up very much, and so you know you end up spending your time and attention on kids that are kind of demanding your attention, and for reasons that make a certain sense. You need to be an adult who is willing to give a kid who needs time, but when they're not demanding it of us, are we providing it in a way that allows them to connect with us? That's different in an online setting than it is in a personal setting, right? In an in-person setting. So if you're thinking, okay, here's a kid who's doing well with his or her voice. Here's a kid who's doing well with sharing certain kinds of things visually as a part of what they do. You can help them move along with what they do all the better by being organized about that. And as always, I think this is one of the traits of all the best teachers I've ever met. Be humble about it, right? I mean, you don't know. As I've written on this subject before, just set aside your omniscience on this, right? You don't know what's going on with them, why they are particular ways. You can guess, but ask, don't tell, right? You do this for this reason. Are you doing this for this reason? Is this something that I need to know more about? And asking those questions, especially because you are missing a lot of the interpersonal cues that we have when we're physically with people, can be really, really important. You look at the kiddo in the picture here, right? This to me is like what we hope for, a kid full of confidence, and literally wearing it, right? That idea that, hey, the world's open. I'm going to make some great things happen. And how we connect with kids and help them know that we believe that they can make a difference in the world can go a long way to building the kind of rapport that will allow for the level of academic interaction that will keep everybody confident about their possibilities of what you teach. Talk a little bit about the high schoolers, right? And so this was my jam for so long, right? As a language teacher in high school, love the burgeoning and intellectual curiosity that's really hitting its stride at the high school level. And so as we look at this, we have to stop and say, first, know that how you grade is going to set a frame for everything. And this is not just a function of your grading system, right? Are you grading in such a way that they pay attention to what comments you write, that they build off of that and everything? It's also how people think about grades generally. One of the things that happened in the spring was that a number of districts in our area and in other areas as well said, okay, we're worried about issues of access, and rightly so. Therefore, no child will be hurt with what they do as a part of online learning. Well, the ramifications of that was kids were like, wait, you're saying that if I do nothing, it won't hurt my grade at all? I can keep what I had in early March? Well, right. I mean, we want you to pay attention. That's okay. I just needed to understand that. So and they were like, I'm out, right? And so you see these news reports that are like, this many percentage of kids, didn't engage at all. It's like, well, of course. And that district, they essentially told the kids, you don't need to do anything. So how we build into this newer system that we're going to get for a lot of you in the fall, where it's like, no, all of this counts. You have to be ready because you may not see the kids right off, just depending on where the numbers go. It may be that you have to do this and it counts. Therefore, second piece there, develop performance assessments. If this is not something you've kind of embraced with, I need to learn more about that, then boy, now's the time, right? Because how they let you know what they know is what we do all the time. And the question is, have we been doing it well? And if what we've been doing are Scantron multiple choice all the time, we have to really stop and say, it might have been efficient, but were we really teaching? Were they really learning? And how do I really know that? And now if you can say, all right, we're going to have, for example, a flip grid, and you're going to be explaining a connection that you made as a part of what we did. Now we've changed the game, and that change is important. Now, I would also say that the gold standard of learning, no matter the setting, is self-direction, where kids are like, yeah, all right, this is cool, I want to do it. And you see this in things like passion projects, Kevin Brookhouser's 20-time work, things like that. And one thing that I did with the group that I taught this last year, I was co-teacher for a class called Creative Solutions for the Global Good, love that name. Is early on in the year, I said, you guys talk to me about challenges, right? Like what are things that you're challenged by? What would you hope to be able to do every day, but you're just not doing it right now? And so we talked about that, and kids talked about things like, okay, well, I really should be making my bed every day, or at least my mom tells me that. Oh, okay, all right. Another kid was like, I should be brushing my teeth before, like after I get up each morning. And I'm like, that's definitely a good idea there, right? Other kids like, I don't want to put things off all the time. I want to get better at not procrastinating. It's like, all right. And so we picked a thing that they wanted to improve on. And just like every time we'd meet, and we met weekly, given the way the class was arranged, I'd say, how'd you do? How'd you do since the last one? And it was never anything that was graded or anything like that, but it became a part of our conversation. And that helped in many ways to get them thinking about how to do this. I include some examples here for challenges the kids may want to take on. So for example, I'm a big fan of Duolingo, right, which is a way to learn a language, a free app for a smartphone that'll allow you to say, I'm going to learn some Spanish this year. I'm going to learn some Hindi or whatever it might be. Feel free. There are musical instruments where, kids like, hey, yeah, I managed to pick up like a new way of playing this thing on the guitar. Excellent. It might be coding, right? You might look at Twinery, Twine, to develop your sense of how to choose your own adventure for coding possibilities. So there's a lot of stuff. And by having those conversations around it and asking them to connect, what's different about how this works and how we've been working on this particular idea for class, those conversations can lead in some real good directions for not just kind of building the communicative connections you need with kids, but also helping them become self-directed learners, which 90% of every schools have built into their expected school-wide learning results and that kind of stuff. So we'll finish off with some resources that we think might be valuable for you. I would heartily recommend the Edu Protocol Field Guide. This is a book that my professional development program, Merit, is doing with Krause Center for Innovation at Foothill College and here in the Bay Area. And they're using my book on teaching and this book on Edu Protocols with the idea that just arm yourself with a bunch of tools ready to go. And the beauty of this particular piece is that you're separating how you teach things and what you teach so that you're not always mixing it up and complicating your planning. And so there's some real good stuff in that book. Also, the San Jose State University College of Education has put out the K-12 Online Teaching Academy, and starting in mid-June and going through mid-July, every weekday they're posting another piece through a webinar series that they run on all kinds of cool things. They got some great people presenting as a part of that. So, you go into that and you find, like people really high quality, like George Barcenas is doing a couple of, for these guys. And if you've never heard George speak, you need to hear George speak for sure.
Eric's on that list too. Eric Cross is doing one of those as well.
Indeed. And Eric is a middle school, he's a science teacher, middle school science teacher. That's right. He's a science teacher down in San Diego. And he's very much about, how do I build the rapport with these kids so that, they can really begin to see me as a mentor and therefore learn things. He speaks very passionately about those things. If you haven't heard him speak, you need to. He's fantastic. So what do we do? Well, we care. We care for kids. We care for their learning. And in order to do that, we care for ourselves, which means being intrigued on a regular basis. One of the things that we hope to do in these webinars is get you to say, well, see, that's an interesting thought. I want to kind of spend some time with that. You can learn Hindi and Duolingo, really? Whatever it might be that allows you to stop and go, yeah, I want to mess with that a bit. So take these pieces, connect with colleagues and just say, hey, let's try this out together. What do you think? What comes to mind? Because those can be really powerful moments for developing who we are. I put out a newsletter every month. The most recent issue of that came out yesterday, July 1st. And so what I would love for people to do is sign up for my little newsletter. All of you who registered for this webinar will get an email from me, that allows you to say, all right, good, I'm in. And if you ever get tired of it, you can always unsubscribe. There's no offense taken. But what we want is for you to know that there are lots and lots of resources out there. And someone might as well do the work of gathering them for you, and I do each month. Additionally, I have a blog called Inspiring Improvement. I hope you'll give that a look. Written some books on becoming better teachers, on how to make your school, the kind of place where ramped up learning becomes the stories of the school and the community, and how tech can allow leaders to build a personal and professionally satisfying arrangement for everybody at their campuses. So if you have questions, stick around. We would love to talk to you. But as we do each week, the goal is to kind of keep it down to about a half hour. And so we'll wind things up with the recording. Susan.
Thank you guys for being here. You can find me on the internet at Tech Coach Susan. I've been tweeting a lot about, I'm a retweeter often. You know, people are out there sharing, and some of the things I've seen is all these opportunities for free PD. You mentioned the San Jose State Academy. There are a lot of places that are doing free workshops all summer. So one thing you can find when you follow me is I am retweeting everything that is FREE. Opportunities for you, just like you did today. You made the choice to show up and learn something. There are a lot of people offering free PD this summer. And so keep your eyes peeled, because you, again, by being here, have said that you're committed to learning. And I think just as teachers and all of the question marks for this fall, the best thing we can do is keep learning and be ready for anything. So follow me, because I'm on a mission to share the free.
Awesome. And take a look at that hashtag on Twitter if you haven't looked at it before, K2Can2, because there's a lot of great material there. Susan is one of the good good souls that posts all kinds of good pieces, as part of that. So my name is Rushton. I run my little nonprofit, and I try to make the world a bit of a better place. And I hope you'll stay in touch. And if you got questions over the course of July before we reconvene with our little shindig here on July 30th, we would love to have you. Note, we will be at a new time when we start back, because we need to set this up so that those of you who are going to be like teaching during this time can find that, like, no, not a problem, I can still join you. So we'll be doing 3:30 Pacific, 4:30 Mountain, 5:30 Central, and 6:30 p.m. Eastern when we come back together on the 30th. So we hope you will be part of that. Hope that you have gotten a lot out of today's episode. We hope you've got some questions lined up if you are joining us as a part of this, and we thank you for encouraging the work we do. See you in a few weeks.